Was pleasure truly a sin, or just a very, very complicated transaction? The air hung thick with the scent of sandalwood and something vaguely ripe. Not unpleasant exactly, but undeniably suggestive. Shadows danced on the mud brick walls of the caravanserai, cast by flickering oil lamps and the restless movements of men and women caught in a perpetual glittering game. This wasn't a palace. It wasn't a temple. It was a shadow play, and within its carefully constructed darkness, a world of illicit desires simmered. Our story begins with Mother Guidance, not a gentle mother, certainly. More like a shrewd, formidable merchant of secrets, draped in silks the color of bruised plums and smelling faintly of incense and, something sharper, she wasn't born into this life, not really. Legend whispered she'd been a noblewoman, a princess perhaps, before a scandal, a particularly scandalous affair involving a falcon and a very disgruntled vizier stripped her of her title and forced her into a life of procuring and arranging. But Mother Guidance didn't mourn her lost status. She'd built an empire on the wreckage of her past, a labyrinth of whispered promises and discreet exchanges. Her domain wasn't a grand palace, but a cramped, dimly lit room above a bustling marketplace. Here, she presided over a peculiar clientele, young men yearning for experience, wealthy patrons seeking discreet entertainment, and most intriguing of all, a handful of women who found solace and, frankly, a delicious rebellion in each other's company. This was not a place of gentle courtship. This was a place where boundaries blurred, where whispered requests and furtive glances held more power than any formal decree. The man who ruled this shadowed kingdom was Commander Copulation. A flamboyant, self-indulgent character, perpetually draped in velvet and radiating an almost unbearable aura of boredom. He was a collector of experiences, a connoisseur of transgression. He'd spent his life chasing fleeting pleasures, moving from one scandalous encounter to the next, leaving a trail of broken hearts and emptied coffers in his wake. He was, in short, a walking, talking cliché, the libertine, the wastrel, the embodiment of everything Mother Guidance despised. And yet there was a strange, almost symbiotic relationship between them. Mother Guidance tolerated his excesses, even encouraged them, seeing in his unrestrained pursuit of pleasure a reflection of her own carefully cultivated defiance. She provided him with a steady stream of companions, carefully selected for their exotic allure and willingness to indulge his whims. He, in turn, generated a lucrative income for her, a steady flow of gold that allowed her to maintain her operation and indulge in her own, more discreet pleasures. It wasn't a partnership built on affection, of course, it was a transaction. A complicated, exquisitely choreographed dance of desire and control. He was the storm, she was the lighthouse, guiding him and others through the treacherous currents of the night. Then there was Ṭayf al-Khayāl, a storyteller, a weaver of tales, and crucially, the designated narrator of this strange drama. He was a man of contradictions, cynical yet hopeful, observant yet detached. He watched the unfolding spectacle with a mixture of amusement and apprehension, documenting the excesses and the hidden motivations of the players. He was tasked with framing the story, with providing a moral commentary, a desperate attempt to impose order on the chaos. But the moral commentary was always complicated. The play was filled with paradoxes. Mother Guidance, despite her reputation for ruthlessness, possessed a surprising tenderness towards her protégés, a young man named Hassan, who had rejected his arranged marriage and sought refuge in her unconventional world. She saw in Hassan a kindred spirit, a fellow rebel against the stifling constraints of society. And then there was the husband, Shaykh ʿAflaq, a Quran teacher, a pillar of the community. He was old, frail, and utterly impotent. His frustration was palpable, a simmering resentment that occasionally erupted in drunken outbursts. Mother Guidance, with a chillingly pragmatic approach, exploited this weakness, manipulating him into a state of perpetual intoxication, effectively using him as a pawn in her elaborate game. The true horror, however, lay in the details. The descriptions of the encounters, rendered in a blend of poetic verse and earthy prose, were shockingly explicit. There were references to rubber, frigger, and grinder, phrases that would have caused a scandal in any respectable court. Yet there was also a strange, unsettling beauty to these descriptions, a celebration of female desire that defied conventional morality. The play wasn't just about transgression, it was about a carefully constructed subversion of power dynamics. Mother Guidance, a woman who had been stripped of her status and forced into a life of servitude, controlled the men who sought her services. She wasn't a victim, she was a master manipulator, a shrewd businesswoman who had carved out a niche for herself in a world dominated by men. And the climax of the play, a grotesque wedding that bordered on the absurd, perfectly encapsulated this subversive logic. The bride, a hideous grandmother with a monstrous grandchild, was a deliberate provocation, a visual representation of the consequences of unchecked desire. The marriage contractor, a man who claimed to uphold conventional morality, delivered a speech filled with pious pronouncements, but his eyes betrayed a knowing wink, suggesting that he was fully aware of the underlying hypocrisy. The play's humor stemmed from this juxtaposition of high-style verse and low-life reality, of eloquent pronouncements and outrageous acts. It was a carnivalesque spectacle, a temporary inversion of social norms, a space where the forbidden could be explored without consequence. But even within this world of transgression, there were limits. Mother Guidance's actions, however audacious, were ultimately constrained by the prevailing social order. She couldn't openly defy the laws of the land, and her activities were always conducted in the shadows. Her final words, delivered as she succumbed to a mysterious plague, were a chilling reminder of this constraint. She bequeathed her operation to her protégé, urging him to continue her work to perpetuate the cycle of desire and exploitation. It was a testament to her unwavering commitment to her chosen path, a final act of defiance against a world that had sought to crush her spirit. And as the curtain fell, the audience was left with a lingering question. Was Mother Guidance a villain, a libertine, or simply a survivor? Was her pursuit of pleasure a form of rebellion, or simply a desperate attempt to reclaim her lost identity? The play offered no easy answers. It was a mirror reflecting the dark corners of human desire, a reminder that even in the most constrained of societies, the impulse to transgress can never be truly extinguished. Was pleasure truly a sin, or just a very, very complicated transaction?